Hello students, so this is going to be the overview of the nursing process. We will be discussing each of the phases in depthly as we go along. Our learning outcomes for this is that each of you will be able to identify major characteristics of the nursing process and also describe the phases of the nursing process. What is nursing process? Nursing process is a systematic, rational method of planning and providing individualized care. As what I have said the other day, that nursing process is what sets us aside, no, as a profession. We use this to provide individualized nursing care to our client. So this is comprised of systematic and rational methodology. Okay, so the purposes of our nursing process is first to identify our client's health status and actual or potential healthcare problems or needs. Okay, so we have our clients, so we are going to use the nursing process. Basically, our client came into the facility because they need help, okay? Because they have a problem, they have a situation. So we are going to use the nursing process to identify first our client status and what are his or her actual, which are happening, which we can see, or potential, what could happen, what possible problems that could surface, okay? So this would be one of the purposes of our nursing process. Next is to establish plans to meet those needs of our client. First, since we said that it is systematic, how will we be able to plan if we were not able to assess? So as we go along, we'll realize how important assessment is, okay? And then our nursing process helps us, okay, to deliver specific interventions. So everything there, from gathering the data, identifying the problems of our client, to establishing plans to address those problems, as well as to deliver or provide specific interventions. So what are the characteristics of the nursing process? First and foremost, the nursing process is cyclical and it is dynamic in nature. So when we say cyclical, it has its specific order. Like we start from assessing, and then diagnosing, and then planning, and then implementing, and then evaluating, ideally. And so it is dynamic in a way that it changes, right? It's not static. It's continuously changing. Like, for example, our client may have this type of problem at this point in time, and then in a short while, he or she will have another problem. So just like our human body, we are never static. We are always dynamic, and that also includes the nursing process. It is client-centered. So when you say client-centered, that means we need to organize our plan according to the problems or the concerns of your client, not according to what we, the nurses, would like to happen. So let us not forget this. It should be client-centered. So what does my client need? What problems do I need to address in my client? Not what I want to happen with my client. Not according to what my goals are. It should be based on the problem of my client. Third is, it is an adaptation of problem solving and systems theory. So when I say problem solving, of course, the nursing process is followed basically to solve the problem of our client. At the same time, we are saying that our clients have this dynamic nature together with that's why our nursing process is also dynamic. We acknowledge that we adopt the systems theory, like this includes input, the processes, and the outputs, as well as this is based on or used for decision making. Okay, so when we say for decision making, it is part, no? So decision making and the nursing process go together. So like for example, we determine how and when to use data to make decisions. Like we decide which data, health data, should be addressed first, which data should be utilized first, as well as they are not bound by standard responses. Okay, so we say that this is client-centered, and we have to realize that every one of our clients is different, even if they might have the same diagnosis. Okay, next is, it is interpersonal and collaborative. Okay, when we say that, it means that we directly and consistently communicate. Number one, with our clients. We talk to our clients. And second is to their families, because we would have to realize that the improvement of our client doesn't solely depend on us. Okay, it has to have the participation of our client if he or she is able, more so with the families or their significant others, as well as we work collaboratively with the rest of the healthcare team. Providing client care using the nursing process is a collaborative effort. It is a joint effort. And what do we want to do when we collaborate together with the rest of the healthcare team? That is to provide what? Quality client care. That is for us to be able to fulfill or do what our client needs at that time. Okay. Next is that it is universally applicable. That means when you say universally applicable, you could use this process in almost all clients with the same problem. Although let us not forget that it should be individualized. Okay, so when we say pain, we can address pain universally, but we should remember that to individualize it to our client. Like not everything that we can do to address or help a client in pain would be applicable to all, but the nursing process would be applicable universally. And then it entails the use of critical thinking and clinical reasoning skills. So if you can observe here, you will see that inside these overlapping phases of the nursing process is the critical thinking. Okay, so we will discuss that later. Okay, so what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the process of intentional higher level thinking to, number one, define our client's problem, examine the evidence-based practice in caring for the client, and make choices in the delivery of care. So these critical thinking skills that we will develop as we go on with our practice will help us define a client's problem. And if we are able to define, then we would be able to determine not only on what we know we have to do, but we have to constantly improve based on evidences, like what are the latest modalities of care for a specific nursing problem. So we have that. So nursing is a science, nursing is dynamic as well. So it is very important that when you deal with your client to use your critical thinking, because what could have worked years before may not be working in the same way that it is right now. Okay, like for example, if you are dealing with clients, especially so like if they have presenting problems, we have to be constantly updated based on what's available, what is the evidence-based practice in caring. Okay, and that will guide us in making choices in the delivery of care. So we provide care which are evidence-based. Okay, so critical thinking is part of that, and that goes to every phase of the nursing process. Like for example, when you do assessment, how do you use your critical thinking? So you use what could be the problem of the client. It could be a presenting problem, or it could be a hidden problem. So it will entail you to use your critical thinking skills. And critical thinking skills is what we call as an application of everything that we learn. Okay, plus the continuous learning that we have and we will have later on, coupled with our experience and practice. Okay, we also have clinical reasoning, which is one characteristic of the nursing process. So this is the cognitive process that uses thinking strategies to gather and analyze client information, evaluate the relevance of the information, and decide on possible nursing actions to improve the client's physiologic and psychosocial outcomes. So what does that mean? We use our clinical reasoning to strategize what type of data we would get, okay? And like for example, it depends on the situation of your client. Like for example, if you are working in the emergency department, you have to have that fast thinking, okay? So that you can strategize what data you will be getting based on what you can see, based on your assessment. Second is you have to evaluate the relevance of this information. With the numerous information, with the bulk of information that we get from assessment, it is very important for us to know which are those important information that we can use. Okay, although most of the information or the data that we gather during assessment could be relevant, but we have to know which data are of higher relevance than the other. So we should know which one data to gather first, and then that also includes the how we decide on possible nursing actions. So that would be based on the data that you will gather, and that would also provide you, that would also guide you how to prioritize, okay, the problems that you can see in your client. So what would you prioritize first? Of course, those are those problems that are most likely to cause danger to life and safety. Okay, and decide. Okay, so when you have decided what actions to do, your goal is to improve your client's physiologic and psychosocial outcomes. So both of this, critical thinking, which is a higher level thinking, and critical reasoning, are characteristic of the nursing process. So I would like you to realize that when we go through um, the nursing process, it's very dynamic, and it it has to be like active activating or using our critical thinking and clinical reasoning. I would like you to I would like to remind you that this comes with your this skill comes as you go along. Okay, the more you practice nursing, the more you study about nursing, your critical thinking and clinical reasoning as well improves. So if you can see, there are 5 phases of the nursing process. We have assessing, diagnosing, planning, implementing, and evaluating. Some would call these phases like a process. So they would call assessing as assessment, diagnosing as diagnosis, planning, implementation, evaluation. But this refers similarly to the same thing. So the abbreviation for our nursing process is the ADPIE, okay? ADPIE, and we do this in order, okay? We do this in order. We don't go directly to planning without assessing. So we do assessing first, we diagnose, and then we plan, and then we implement, and then we evaluate. And since this is cyclical, after evaluation, then you might need to go back to assessment. Or during planning and implementation, you will find that you have to go back to assessing. Okay? Nevertheless, these are the phases of the nursing process. So when you say assessing, that includes collection of data, okay? That includes organizing the data. With the many data that you can gather, then you will have to organize them. And then you have to validate the data. Are the subjective cues or the subjective data and the objective data supporting each other, or are they contradicting? So you have to validate. As well as you should know how to document your data. So we have different ways of documenting our data. We will be discussing that as we go along with your health assessment. Next is diagnosing. So when you say diagnosing, those data that we had already gathered and organized, this is the time that we analyze this data. What do this data point to? What are these data telling us? Okay, so in the process, we identify the health problems, the risks, and strengths of our clients. So what does that mean? We identify the health problems, like what are the actual health problems that our client has, and what are the risks that our client may have. Like, for example, your client could have a risk for fall because your client had a condition wherein he or she had weaknesses on her extremities. So what are the risks, or what are the problems that could possibly happen or could possibly add up to the current problem of your client? So you have to as well take note of that. And what are the strengths of your client? So when you say strength, what does that mean? That means what can your client do? So I would like to remind you that in every dealing we have with our client, one of our main objective is to develop independence. So what can our client do? What can our client provide when it comes to their strength? to help them as well answer or correct their health condition. Okay, and then we formulate diagnostic statements. So when I say diagnostic statements, this is what we call as our nursing diagnosis. So in your fundamentals of nursing, as you go along your course, you will encounter how to formulate diagnostic statements. The third phase in the nursing process is planning. Okay, so after we had organized our data, after we identified the problems, and now we have to prioritize the problems or the nursing diagnosis. Most of our clients will have more than one nursing problem or nursing diagnosis. So we have to prioritize which one we should address first. And so how to prioritize will be discussed in your fundamentals of nursing, as well as formulate goals or desired outcomes. What do we want to happen, or what does the client want to happen? Okay, what does that mean? Okay, of course, if your client verbalizes or tell you of pain, what would most likely be the desired outcome or goal of your client? To lessen the pain, or to eliminate the pain, or to be more comfortable. So you have to do that. You have to formulate. So when you say formulate your goals, you have to state what is expected, what you expect to happen, what should happen after a certain period of time. Okay, and that depends as well with the type of problem. So if the problem is an emergency or urgent problem, of course you cannot have it long term. Okay, and then select the nursing intervention. Again, for every nursing diagnosis, we can choose. No, we have a lot of nursing interventions to choose from. Again, you have to individualize, okay, depending on the situation of your client, what nursing interventions you would choose. And then you write down your nursing intervention. So you write down your plan. What do you intend to do for that specific client? Okay, so the fourth phase of the nursing process is implementing. Okay, so what do we do there? So we do implementing is the action phase. That is where we do or implement the planned nursing intervention. So in the process, we need to, as we go along implementing the nursing interventions, we have to continuously reassess the client. Why? To know if our intervention is really addressing the problem of our client. So as what I have said, the nursing process is cyclical. Okay, it is in implementation that we determine if we need assistance. Like for example, if we need to reposition our client in bed, or if we need to transfer our client from the bed to the chair, or from the bed to the commode, then you have to determine if you need assistance. Okay, you might need assistance, especially in lifting your client, or you might need assistance with the other members of the healthcare team. You might need to talk to refer client's condition to his or her attending physician as well. Okay, so you implement the nursing intervention. So we have our independent, interdependent, and dependent nursing interventions, which we will be discussing in the fundamentals of nursing. And then you supervise delegated care. Like for example, if you had delegated hygiene care of your client to his or her watcher, then you have to supervise how it is done, because especially if it will, like for example, have the possibility of endangering the the safety of your client. Like for example, if your client is advised that he or she can go home, but he or she has to have this nasogastric tubing for feeding, then you will have to supervise the significant other how to perform that at home. Okay, that is part of our responsibility. And then don't forget to document your nursing activities. We would always say that what is not documented did not happen. And of course, you don't document what you did not do also. Okay? And so the fifth phase of the nursing process is evaluating. When we say evaluating, that is collecting the data related to the outcome. So we say evaluate, we would like to know what happened after we performed the nursing interventions, what happened. So this is data collection, but this is not going to be the baseline. This is the evaluation. Okay, so what happens, like for example, your client had stomach ache or pain, headache, whatever it is, like, say for example, pain. And then you said that your goal is to lessen the pain. During the evaluation phase, you would like to know if indeed your client's assessment of his or her pain level decreased. Okay, and you compare your data with your outcomes. Like for example, we don't just rely on what our client said to us. We compare the data, like what about the vital signs? Okay, what about the non-verbal cues? We have to do that as well. And then relate nursing actions to your client goals or outcomes. What does that mean? We have to know that again, our nursing process is client-centered, no? Not nurse-centered. So did we meet as well the goal or the outcome desired of our client? So we have to relate our action to that. And then we would draw conclusion about the problem status. Like for example, is it a goal met? Is it a goal not met? Is the goal partially met? Okay, so we have to draw conclusion. And then we could probably write a rationale about why we said we were able to the goal was partially met or the goal was not met. Okay, and then you could either continue, modify, or terminate the patient's care plan. So like for example, if the problem had been resolved, then you don't have to continue the nursing process or do the assessment again for the same problem. Okay, so that is your overview of the nursing process.